All right, this is Josh Poet, First Contact Radio. I am here with Dan Johnson. He has been recognized as one of the top 30 impromptu speakers in the United States. He's a political science major at Bowling Green State University. He's always been interested in politics and was appalled when he saw the direction our country was heading in. And his wake-up call was watching a video on the NDAA in November. After doing research in late January, he founded Panda, People Against the National Defense Act, and is supported by groups across the political spectrum, and is now one of the fastest growing liberty movements in the nation, with over 60 chapters in over 30 states. Dan, welcome to First Contact Radio. How are you today?
I'm doing excellent. It's way too cold here in Ohio. I'm waiting for the summer months or at least the spring to come around. But besides that, we've been rocking and rolling here at Panda over the past few days.
Excellent, excellent. So why don't we start at the basics so that you can acquaint our audience with who you are and what Panda is all about. So you want to expand a little bit on what Panda is and how it got started, a little bit of your background?
Absolutely, yeah. Panda, People Against the NDAA, People Against the National Defense Authorization Act, was started back in late January of 2012, around the 29th. So we're coming up on our birthday here. And it was started basically because someone drew the line between the NDAA and the 1933 Enabling Acts in Hitler's Germany. Now, I know Godfrey's law says you're not supposed to mention Hitler on the online or you lose, but a lot of the things that have been happening in our country for the past several years bear a unique resemblance to the regime of the Third Reich. And I was a huge World War II buff, huge history buff. And I was homeschooled. And we didn't have a video game console, we didn't have a TV, we didn't really have much of anything for most of the time I was homeschooled. So what was there? There was the library. And I went down to the library and I would take out 20, 30 books every 3-4 weeks on World War II. And I read up on Imperial Japan, I read up on the rise of the Third Reich, and I read up on Stalinist Russia, even the Winter War between Finland and Russia. And when someone in a video online drew the correlation between the NDAA and the 1933 Enabling Acts in Hitler's Germany, I realized this is something we need to fight. That I'm not going to let my country go down in flames. I thought we were the land of the free, the home of the brave, and the land of opportunity and the American dream. And NDAA shattered that world that I had. So founded Panda late January. We have been one of the fastest growing liberty movements in the nation. Since then, we've grown to 90 chapters nationwide in almost 40 states, so that bio needs a little updating. But we also have a media reach. We've reached millions of people here at Panda between myself, our state coordinators, and our chapter heads, people around the world, and people inside the country. In fact, we're planning on going international this year and expanding to. We have a lot of interest in Canada about stopping a law like this from being passed in their country as well. So we have really been it's been a blessing that this group has grown as fast as it has. And we are fighting the NDAA, which is the National Defense Authorization Act, and specifically the 2012 NDAA. Because if I may take a little segue into exactly what the NDAA is here.
Sure, please.
The NDAA is the National Defense Authorization Act. Now, according to the U.S. Constitution, any law that we pass cannot fund our military for 2 years or more. So every year they pass a bill to fund the military, and that is the National Defense Authorization Act. Well, it's usually a good thing. It authorizes funding for our troops. It makes sure they get paid, they get fed, and makes sure they have the tools and resources they need to defend our country. However, since it passes every year and no one wants to be seen as not supporting the troops, it has become the proverbial haystack, if you will, that people throw needles into. And in 2007, the John Warner National Defense Authorization Act authorized a military unit to operate on U.S. soil, only on U.S. soil, and for civil disobedience and crowd control purposes. Now, that part of the act was later repealed in 2009. However, it gave way to the 2012 NDAA, which authorized, in a nutshell, the indefinite detention of any person on U.S. soil, territories, or protectorates, including an American citizen, without a charge, without a trial, without access to a lawyer, without being able to tell a family member they've been detained, and applies the laws of war to U.S. soil, overriding the Constitution, at least legally, and declaring the United States, as Senator Lindsey Graham put it, a battlefield in the eyes of the law.
Yeah, that's pretty scary, isn't it?
It follows the pattern of history.
Mm-hmm.
Those who do not follow history are doomed to repeat it.
So go ahead.
It's something that should never have even been thought of in the halls of Congress or in the presidency or in any of the branches of government, much less actually enacted into law. But it follows the cycle of the body politic that former British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli coined. And it follows the country cycle from liberty to abundance and back into bondage. So, although it's dangerous, and that's why we're fighting it, it's not only concerning, but dangerous, and destroys our Constitution and our constitutional rights and our inalienable God-given rights that cannot be taken from us. Even though the NDAA destroys those, or at least overrides them in the minds of the law, it's something that if anyone had looked at history and seen the path that we're on, the path other countries have taken, it's normal. It's something that's happened before.
Right. So the question is, why don't we learn the lessons, and why do we keep repeating the same patterns over again that keep hurting ourselves?
Well, you see, you have to imagine the American populace like a kettle full of hot water. When something turns up the heat enough and brings the misery index of the American people to a high enough point, the kettle starts boiling and the kettle starts screaming. The American people start screaming, do something about this, do something about this, do something about this. So then the politicians come over and they'll pop the cap of that kettle just a little bit, let the steam out, so the kettle stops screaming. They won't give them any more freedom. They'll close the cap after a little while. So you give them a little more freedom for a little bit, and then you close the cap right back on the kettle. And then a new generation of people will come in. It's like pouring cold water into that kettle. You have to restart the process all over again. So the appeasing the restless natives, if you will, is what politicians have been doing in this country, at least for decades. They're not really effecting any meaningful change that restores the Constitution. They've just been appeasing the restless natives and pretending like they're doing something to protect our rights, especially since 9/11.
Right.
But I think compared to other countries, the American people are more well aware and taking more action than any other country beforehand because of the internet. And the internet is that instantaneous communication, so that even if the government doesn't want us to know what they're doing, we know what they're doing anyway. So for the first time in history, when a country has reached this point, they've reached the tipping point. The United States is at a tipping point. I will mince no words. The United States is at a tipping point if they have not already gone over the edge. And the U.S. government has brought us to this point with their relentless war on terror, which is actually just a synonym for a war on our rights. However, with the internet, with the free flow of communication, with the free flow of instantaneous communication, We know more about what was going on in government. We have a bigger chance to stop it than ever before. Panda was born on Twitter and Facebook. It was born on social media. It was born on the internet. And it survives and thrives through the internet. So we have, and I'm not sure how much longer we're going to have it at our disposal. There have been at least 5 major attacks on the internet just in the past year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure how much longer we're going to have this tool for liberty. But right now, while we have it, we have the greatest chance of turning back this cycle, of breaking this cycle, because we have the information at our fingertips. I'm not sure if you know, but last year in Congress, they tried to pass a bill that said the American people do not need to know what's going on in Congress because they're not smart enough to know, basically. They tried to pass a bill getting rid of places like the government printing office that show the legislation to the American people. They tried to pass a law hiding that.
It's crazy.
And that shows how scared they are of the free flow of information. So right now is our best time to strike. Right now is when we as Americans, we as people inside the United States, territories, and protectorates, it's now time for us to take action, because if we wait, we're just going to lose resources in a war of attrition that we will end up eventually losing.
So that doesn't make sense what you say. It's because the internet isn't going to be around forever the way they keep threatening it, so we don't know. And they pull that tool out, then that really makes it a different game.
Absolutely. It would be a little hard to share ideas, files, and the amount of information with other people on CB radio.
Right.
It can be done, but it's quite a bit harder. And
So
we have the resource right now that allows us to easily take advantage of that rapidly closing window to turn our country back peacefully.
right. So when you fight the NDA, what like specifically do you do when people hear you use that term of fighting the NDAA and they wonder what does that mean? So what is it like? How are you doing that? What are the specifics?
All right. In order to stop the implementation of a law,
Hmm.
there are 3 steps you have to take if you're going to do it right. The first step is obviously to pass legislation against it. Now, the oath of office to the U.S. Constitution, or outlined in the U.S. Constitution, is, and I'm going to read Article 6, Clause 3. It says, the
Okay.
senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. If you, for example, decide that one day you want to stop drinking everything else but water, you want to only drink water, you're not going to drink anything else, you're going to make an oath right now to only drink water from here on out. You have to be able to yourself decide what water is and the difference between water and soda. Is sparkling water water or soda? You have to be able to decide that difference, determine it for yourself. Otherwise, there's no way you're going to be able to uphold that oath, right?
Okay.
Well, what we're doing is we're asking state legislatures to recognize that it is unconstitutional because they have the power to do so. If they didn't have the power to recognize that the NDAA was unconstitutional, they wouldn't be able to uphold their oath to the Constitution.
Makes sense.
So a state legislator or a state legislature, we are trying to get them and counties and cities and all other government bureaucracies and government institutions to recognize that the NDAA is unconstitutional. It's obviously unconstitutional. There, even from a human rights perspective, it's wrong to pick someone up without a trial and haul them off somewhere where they're never going to be able to talk to their family again if you don't want them to. That's just wrong. And it's obviously unconstitutional. So the first part is to get a state, a county, a city, or some sort of governmental body to declare the NDAA unconstitutional and recognize that it's unconstitutional for use where they're at.
Okay.
And that helps as a deterrent. So if the President of the United States has one person he wants to detain in, let's just say, Santa Clara, California, and one person he wants to detain in Oakland County, Michigan. In Oakland County, Michigan, they've already passed something saying that the NDA is unconstitutional. In Santa Clara, they haven't. He's going to go after the person in Santa Clara because they want to avoid the media attention on this law. So it acts as a deterrent. The second step is getting the law enforcement involved. By declaring it unconstitutional, it already sets pieces in motion. No officer of that state, no one in that state, no one working for anyone under that state, so the city, the county, etc., can assist in implementing an unconstitutional law. It's automatic. If you take an oath to the Constitution, you cannot assist in upholding an unconstitutional law. Now, if you're the garbage man, that's a different story. You don't take an oath. But if you're an elected official, you most definitely do take an oath. And that oath is to the Constitution. So you cannot enforce unconstitutional law. The second step of this is to get the law enforcement of that state, county, city, etc., to recognize that the NDA is unconstitutional and they should not enforce it. The third step is to have citizens exercise ever vigilance. The citizens of that state or that county or that city, there at least needs to be a small group watching out for indefinite detention and holding the public officials' feet to the fire. And if you have that vigilant group as the third level, you have fully and completely done everything you can to stop the NDAA when you have those three steps completed. Now, overall, there are many ways to stop it, but that is the most thorough.
Okay, and how long does that process take? It sounds like it takes a little while, huh?
It does. It takes a little while. Our goal for the end of this year is to get the first step done, so the legislatures all recognizing this is unconstitutional, all 50 states. And this process is a never-ending process, really, because of the citizen vigilance portion of it. If the Constitution is just a piece of paper unless we defend it. If we don't defend it, it's worthless. And as such, it's going to take a little while to get these groups set up, but it's going to be a process we're going to be dedicated to. And again, even the internet hops in and makes it easier because we're working with a company right now called OpenWatch, and they will be developing an application to record authorities secretly with. So you can be recording an indefinite detention and immediately send it up to a server where someone is watching out for that. And you almost create a nationwide alert network for a possible abuse of executive or police power. And it'll take a little while to get that in. In fact, it'll take quite a while, and it'll have to be consistently monitored and consistent vigilance, and there'll be issues and there'll be problems that come up with it. However, that's the best way to make sure that the NDAA is stopped. You see, a gunman or a criminal with a gun is usually not stopped by a gun control law. In fact, almost never. But they are stopped by one of two things. Number one, the threat of a concealed carry weapon holder, or number
Okay.
two, a concealed carry weapon holder themselves actually drawing their gun. Those two stop criminals. So if you have kind of like people who carry concealed weapons, if you have a group of people who are ever vigilant and that nobody knows who they are besides you and several of their friends, but they're ever vigilant and they're watching out for abuses of power like this,
Hmm.
then you create a permanent, lasting effect that, if not stopping indefinite detention, can at least mitigate it.
Okay, that makes sense. So, what are some of the ways then that a person might, be vigilant, and how would they watch in this day and age, you know,
Well,
for such abuses?
in this day and age, if, for example, in the case of Brennan Robb,
Hmm.
he was a ex-Marine in Virginia who had posted some rap lyrics on his Facebook page. And somebody reported him to the authorities, and they came down to his house and they basically detained him for 2 weeks in mental health facilities without a trial, without a charge. Well, if anybody was watching, if any of his neighbors were paying attention to the fact he was being picked up, and then called the police department to
Hmm.
find out, hey, what's going on? Or showed up at the next local government meeting and said, what's going on? Then the very fact that the federal government knew there was somebody like that in the neighborhood or figured there might be somebody like that in the neighborhood would be a deterrent for them picking up Brennan Robb. He wouldn't have to go through what he went through.
Okay.
That's where being vigilant is, just paying attention. And if it's not an indefinite detention, but they know as soon as something appears like an indefinite detention, they're going to get a flood of calls to the police department. They're going to get people showing up at the council meetings saying, are you breaking our Constitution? If they know those are coming,
Hmm.
then they'll be less likely, much less likely, to trample on anyone's rights because they know people are there and people are watching. And the biggest thing the government wants to avoid is the spotlight.
Right. They don't want to be known about this one, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you find are your biggest challenges when you're out? You must deal with challenges both of the public as well as, you know, politicians or government related. What are the challenges you have to deal with?
A lot of people, first of all, are very supportive of what we do when they find out. And the key
Hmm.
word being when they find out. So the first challenge is education. And this is with any issue. The first challenge is this is happening. Here's what's going on. Here's what you need to understand is happening. And the second challenge is coming directly from politicians, is that you're all wearing a tinfoil hat. You're all walking around talking to aliens. That is a excuse that a lot of politicians will give. It's kind of like a way of saying, hey, it's not my job to cover it, so I'm going to discredit you people so I don't have to deal with it. And you'll find this in a lot of different places all around the world. It's not my job. It's a standard excuse for anything.
Right.
But those are the two biggest oppositions we come up against because all the facts are on our side. Quite literally, there's nothing but rhetoric and statements, extreme statements, and emotional backing behind the supporters of the NDAA. All the facts, all the law, all of the Constitution is on our side. So it's very hard for them to battle us on facts, and that's why they haven't managed to do anything to support the NDAA in the national media is because the national media can't support the NDAA. They won't talk about it because they can't support it, and they can't support it because that if they tried, the American people would see right through it. So what you run into is you have all the facts on your side, but you have to overcome the emotional, everyone's a terrorist, and we think that you all are terrorists too, or you're crazy that we shouldn't kill terrorists on sight. As long as we can get past that and the fact that they're not educated about what's going on, they're on our side. Most people agree you should not be picked up in the middle of the night and dragged off to some military prison under the NDAA, under the Bubbles Bill, under any kind of law. They agree that it's a basic human right to get a trial.
Right. Absolutely is. So that's a lot of information. That's definitely a lot. And you know, do you think and do you find that people understand how much the police state is in effect these days?
It depends on who you're talking to. Especially a person who follows the party line
Mm-hmm.
will not believe that we are in a police state. But let me read off to you the Merriam-Webster definition of a police state.
Okay.
A political unit characterized by repressive governmental control of political, economic, and social life, usually by an arbitrary exercise of power by the police and especially secret police, in place of a regular operation of administrative and judicial organs of the government according to publicly known legal procedures. By that definition, we are a police state. Repressive governmental control of
Mm-hmm.
political life. How many people have been dragged off to prison for political comments? Tens of reporters, if not hundreds of reporters, have been dragged off to prison, have been censored, have been fired for political comments.
Mm-hmm.
Economic. What was the entire Occupy Wall Street movement about? It was, they didn't really have a common message. But if there was a common message you had to pick out, it was in the name. It was Occupy Wall Street. It was the bankers got bailed out, we got sold out. Economic repression is when the people who commit fraud, like HSBC,
Mm-hmm.
are let off the hook of $1 trillion of fraud, and people who uh, are in debt to, let's say, student loans, have paramilitary police show up at their house and haul them off to prison. So repressive governmental control of economic, repressive governmental control of social life. You see that every day, especially
Mm-hmm.
if anyone lives in New York City. Right off the bat, they'll see that. There's armed counterterrorism units on New York subways. There's talk about repressing the social life. You have the TSA in New York
Oh yeah.
subways. You have, so there we go. The repression and the repressive governmental control of political, economic, and social life, usually by an arbitrary exercise of power by police. What do we see? New York NYPD got sued over 17,000 times last year, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Repressive exercise of power by police, and especially secret police. What is the NSA? What is the CIA? What is the Department of Homeland Security? They're all under executive branch. In fact, the director of the TSA told Congress he doesn't have to appear at their hearing because they have no control over the TSA. By secret police in place of regular operation or administrative and judicial organs of the government. The administrative and judicial organs of the government were set up by our Constitution. The NDAA, indefinite detention, secret police, is outside our Constitution. And our Constitution is a publicly known legal procedure. By the very definition from Merriam-Webster, we are a police state.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsey Graham, 30-year JAG lawyer or military lawyer, Senator Lindsey Graham would say not only are we, he wouldn't use the word police state, he would use, not only do we have the tools necessary to interrogate terrorists, but he's also said that the world is the homeland, including the battlefield. Or the world is the battlefield, including the homeland. Well, that makes us not just a police state, but a war zone.
Yeah, you're right.
It doesn't get much more clear than that.
Out there in Tampa, I don't know if you got a chance to walk around, or there was quite a presence out there.
The National Guard was on the streets downtown Tampa, 4 per corner, Kevlar vests, military rifles, camo.
Yep.
You'd think you were walking into Cuba.
Yep. There's 3,500 around the campsite there at the Paul Fest.
Whew.
The campground. It was. I've never seen so many officers and non-officers in one location at one time. And
well,
yep.
At the 2008 Democratic National Convention, they had a free speech zone.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just free speech zone; it was a free speech cage. So literally, they'd open the cage, you'd be able to step in and yell your piece, and then walk out of the cage if you wanted to, if you were done yelling.
Yeah, crazy world we've gotten to, huh?
We're following the cycle. We're right on track.
Right on track.
Most civilizations last around 300 years. We're edging pretty close to that after the American Revolution. So we got, 1776 to 2076 would be 300 years. And we're not too far from it.
Yeah, it just doesn't say much for humanity. It just seems that there's an inherent stupidity that won't go away, that we keep repeating the same cycles.
And we have a chance to not repeat it here.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're so well equipped with the instantaneous communication, with the information that we've been given. Because in every dictatorship around the world where they have successfully installed a tyrannical regime, one of the first things they did was take control of the communications, control the information sources. There was a man, one of the only people, in fact, the only person known to escape from the North Korean death camps. He said that he was born in the death camps, and his mother and brother tried to escape one day. And he turned them in when they asked who tried to escape. Well, the penalty for trying to escape was death. And he watched his mother and brother get shot in front of him. And the interviewer, I believe it was on 60 Minutes, the interviewer was asking him, so, did you feel any remorse? Did you feel anything bad? Did it hurt you or anything like that? He's like, no. And the reason for that is because he thought that was the way the world worked. The only reason he even knew there was an outside of that camp is because they brought in a prisoner, a new prisoner, who was talking about the world outside of the camp and telling him all about it. See, people have been fed in every dictatorial regime before the United States, have been fed a carefully prescribed dose of propaganda. We still have the freedom of information That's why we're so powerful. We still have the freedom of information, even if the government doesn't want us to have that information, we get it anyway.
Right.
That's why we have the biggest chance, and that's why we're so powerful here in the United States. That's why we have a chance to turn back the cycle. So it would appear that humanity has gotten smarter because the United States was the only country founded on freedom and liberty.
All right.
And
Well,
so, tyranny, as Dr. Ron Paul would say, tyranny
mhm.
is ancient, liberty is new. But since we were founded, the two things that are going to save our country, well, three things that are going to save our country, if it can be saved, the three things that are going to save our country are number one, in God we trust. If God wants this country, if the big man upstairs wants this country to be saved, it will. Number two is the free flow of information. Since the government has not put a stranglehold on the type of information we get yet, they're trying. The mainstream media is bought and paid for at the highest levels. And number three, it is the principles that are ingrained in us by being American. It is the principles of freedom and liberty that even if we don't know about them, our country has a culture of freedom and liberty. Those three things are our advantages. We're losing those advantages the longer we wait. And that's why we're taking action now.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So, any highlights of the website, Dan, that people should know about when they go there? What they should check out first?
Yeah, absolutely. We've created this website as the ultimate hub or the ultimate portal for anything NDAA related. It has pretty much anything a person could need to win any debate with any politician, to take action in their area, and to educate themselves on the dangers that the NDAA poses to our American constitutional system. The first part I'd like to highlight is the What is the NDAA section.
Okay.
This is very simple. It has some legal analysis. It has some basics about it. It has some little pieces that people can look at and find out exactly what is this NDAA. And especially, I want to point out, in legal analysis under what is the NDAA, there is a piece called Four-Star Generals Write Stunning Op-Ed Against the NDAA. Two retired four-star Marine generals, James P. Krulak and Joseph C. Hoare, wrote an op-ed called Guantanamo Forever in the New York Times. And this op-ed at pandaunite.org shows that the military is most definitely opposed to the NDAA. We can support our troops and be against the 2012 NDAA's indefinite detention provisions. This op-ed proves it. So that's a part I want to point out. And another part is under, also, I should say, under what is the NDAA. And it's, you scroll over NDAA basics and you'll see NDAA presentation. If anyone wants a quick down and dirty on what is the NDAA, that NDAA presentation is for them. It's been designed with the common person in mind, and it is legally sound enough for the Supreme Court Historical Society. So that NDAA presentation under NDAA Basics is one of the best tools for a basic introduction to what the NDAA is and why we're so concerned about it. And the last two things I'd like to point out.
Okay.
Again, under what is the NDAA, you'll see America against the NDAA. This is a place where anyone can comment and say why exactly they are against the NDAA with us. So the public can see, here's why people are against the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act. There's, I think, it's a very unknown portion of our website, but even still, there's, I believe, at least 10 or 15 comments that give you a broad swath of reasons why people are against the NDAA. So people can go there and comment and tell the world why they are against the indefinite military detention of themselves, their friends, and their family. And then finally,
Hmm.
under resources,
Okay.
there's an action kit. This action kit provides all the pieces necessary to fight the NDAA. Everything from promotional material to letters to sample legislation and even miscellaneous items such as a debunking of the House Armed Services Committee report lying to our faces about what the NDAA actually does. So those three portions of the website, obviously the website is huge. It has a lot of different places, but those three portions I especially want to highlight.
All right. And you wanted me to ask you about Operation Homeland Liberty.
Absolutely. I'm assuming you're well familiar with the Department of Homeland Security.
Yes.
They're our favorite department too. He. Um, the Department of Homeland Security has it's almost Orwellian, if you will, because they do nothing to really secure our homeland against foreign invasion, which, if they were actually securing the homeland, they'd be on our borders. They're doing very little on our borders. They are doing some. They're doing very little on our borders, and they're doing a lot more in our pants. And they're doing a lot more on our streets, in our neighborhoods, in our police departments. So, in response to the Department of Homeland Security,
Hmm.
we've launched Operation Homeland Liberty. Now,
Okay.
Operation Homeland Liberty is the plan to, starting in Wood County, Ohio, stop the NDAA in all 50 states by the end of this year. That is by December 31st, 2013, the second anniversary of the signing of the NDAA. I almost want to personally walk up to the White House and hand deliver a letter to the President of the United States and Congress saying that all 50 states have agreed you overstepped your constitutional bounds there. We will stop the NDAA in all 50 states by December 31st, 2013, on the second anniversary of the signing of the 2012 NDAA. Homeland Liberty will start in Wood County, Ohio. And there's two reasons it's starting in Wood County. Number one, it's where we started. We started out of Bowling Green, Ohio, which is located in Wood County, Ohio, and that's where we originally began our NDAA fight. Secondly, however, Ohio, as Jon Stewart would put it, is swing state hell. You need a doctor and therapy and some extra prescriptions after seeing all the political ads on TV and during election season in Ohio. It's insane. Everybody wants that key Ohio voter. Well, Wood County, Ohio, if I'm not mistaken, has decided the election for the past 30 years. It's a very politically important and powerful county in the state of Ohio. So we're starting in Wood County, stopping the NDAA here, and then we're going to go out to the other 50 states. In Nevada, we have BDR 728. That's Bill Draft Resolution 728, the Nevada Liberty Preservation Act. We are pushing in the state of Nevada. In Michigan, HB 5768, Tom McMillan's bill. In Pennsylvania, in Oklahoma, in Ohio, in Oregon, in Florida, in Missouri, Alabama, Louisiana, and several other states, including New York, we are pushing hard to introduce legislation, or we've been guaranteed that legislation will be introduced at the state level by state representatives. We are looking to stop the NDA in all 50 states, and we're looking really, really good right now. I would say at a conservative estimate, we have at least 10 states on board with stopping the NDAA, and it's only 5 days into the year.
Nice.
So Operation Homeland Liberty is a mission page that will be on the front page of Panda.Unite.org for the next year. It will not be a one post and we're done. It will be a constantly updated mission page. So if people out there are listening and you go to Homeland Liberty, check back, bookmark that page and check back in at least once a week, because we'll be adding new actions to that page. And that's the place where people can take action. See, back in 2007, 2008, there was a 2 million man march on Washington, D.C. How much has changed in the view of our liberty, in the view of the goals of that march? Nothing. Besides, perhaps it has gotten worse. Shouldn't say nothing has changed. Nothing positive has happened from that 2 million person march. Protests in the streets almost haven't changed a dang thing. Online petitions, you'd be better off twiddling your thumbs than signing one. Calling your federal officials, don't bother picking up the phone. It's a waste of minutes. However, we found that action at the state level is not only possible, it's plausible and has been done before in Virginia. So at that Homeland Liberty action page, people can go check in at least once a week for new actions. These actions will be anything from attending an event if you're close enough, or also any person can call their legislators, call specific legislatures and legislators that we lay out on the website for them to call. All the actions will be very specific, who to target, and what we basically want to do with it. So anybody who's listening, check into Operation Homeland Liberty at least once a week to see exactly what's going on here at Panda that we need your help with, that we need you to take action, and we need you to take meaningful action, and action that will actually make a difference and bring our country back to freedom and liberty and justice like it's supposed to be and like it was founded on. Our Congress, our president, our judicial branch have trampled on our liberty for far too long. We are running against a timeline. Hedges v. Obama is going to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has a ridiculously horrible record on civil liberties. The NDAA lawsuit gets to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court declares it constitutional. It's going to be very difficult for us to do anything against the NDAA. However, we can move against the NDAA in 2013 when all the state legislatures are open, when we have the biggest chance to stop it. I'm sick and tired. I don't know who else is out there who's listening, who's sick and tired of the way our federal government has treated our founding documents and our Constitution and our inalienable God-given rights. I'm sick and tired of them trampling on our rights. And Operation Homeland Liberty is us striking back and saying, no, we will not take any more of this. This is where the buck stops. This is where your tyrannical pieces of legislation are no more. This is where the people rise up. This is where the people fight back. This is it. We're done. We will not take this anymore. Our pain, our misery index has reached its peak, and we will not take this anymore. We will not just complain about it on Facebook. We'll not just gripe about it to our neighbors. We'll actually take action against this legislation in a peaceful, non-violent manner, and in a manner that actually makes a difference. That's Operation Homeland Liberty.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I will I'll post this up on our site. so that we can keep tabs on it and keep tabs throughout the year of how you're doing with this. And yeah, that's awesome. God bless you for the work you're doing out there, Dan. It's I'm sure you have your share of challenges with it, and stay safe. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, well, you just have to make a decision as a patriot that I will carry this through, or they will gun me down in a trench somewhere, and either way, I win. So,
Either way you win, right?
yeah, either way, I win.
Well, awesome. That's awesome that you're standing up, because that will only inspire more people to stand up as well, and keep standing up. So, excellent. Well, Dan, thank you very much for being on the show and letting us know about NDAA and what's going on with Panda. And we'll certainly keep tabs and wish and hope for the best for it.
Thank you for having me on.